Greetings, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. No? What'd you say? Oh, we are not having a mic at all, so this is all for show. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully in the back you can hear me. In a few moments we are going to be welcoming our graduates, but I wanted to welcome you, friends and family. Welcome to the diploma ceremony for Arts and Cultures Masters. I think we're ready. Excellent. All right. Welcome, students, family, and friends for the Arts and Cultures MA Diploma Ceremony. The Arts and Culture Studies began in 2014 as an international MA program, and it was largely built on a previous Dutch MA program in the Sociology of Arts and Culture, which was offered for several years. But this MA offered our students the ability to meet and work with both students and lecturers from across the globe. Today, we congratulate 24 graduates, 6 cum laude, in earning their diploma. This year, and I think we can all agree with this, has been particularly challenging. And consequently, the graduates that we celebrate today are particularly exceptional. Having faced the extra challenges posed by a difficult and uncertain year, they created their own futures and emerged from this year's lockdown as literally masters in their field. We are very happy to welcome so many students and their families and friends today, either those who live in Rotterdam or those who return to receive their diploma. All our graduates will be addressed by their MA thesis supervisor, though some of our lecturers are currently teaching and will need to address you through video. These advisors' brief statements on the thesis work of our graduates will give you an idea of the diversity and quality of the work coming out of our department. Our specialties range from heritage to museums, education to digitalization, and we are consistently well evaluated for our high quality curriculum and the dedication of our teachers. This ceremony does take a while, but we believe it fits with the small scale of our program. Handing out the diplomas individually is an example of the personal attention that we want to give to our students. The lecturers we'll hear from today are Mikael Bergman, Julia Peters, Naomi Osterman, Thomas Calkins, though I believe he's on video, Kimmy Colombo, Fiona Konings, Hanneke Ada, Julian Skop, Niels Van Poca, Kim Duncore, and Emily Clark. And I am Laura Braden, coordinator of the Arts and Culture Studies MA program. We will start by handing out our diplomas, and in the intermission there'll be a class speech by Kimmy Colombo. Then the rest, the diplomas will be delivered, and we will welcome our graduates to take their cap and gown pictures with our photographer. So let's get started, and will you please come to the front when I call your name? Okay. Mikael Bergman, and our first students today, is it Susanna? I'm sorry, Susanna.
So, dear Susanna, beste Susanna, let me start with the first impression I had of you and your project when you started the master program early in the last academic year. In your initial assignments, you proposed to study how the experience had changed for theater audiences due to the pandemic at the time, and still a very relevant question indeed. I do remember being a little bit intimidated though. You wrote with much confidence and you clearly knew what you were talking about. Of course, it's good to be passionate about a topic you're going to study, but sometimes it can be difficult to keep critical distance if you're too involved in a topic. So I thought it would need some effort to make sure you would maintain this scientific distance. That's the thing with first impressions. Sometimes they're just plain wrong. When we discussed your project in person for the first time, it became clear that you are not overconfident. Rather the opposite. You were modest and almost even maybe a bit insecure at times. You seemed almost surprised sometimes that you were doing what you were doing was very interesting, but it really was. So you came up with a research design where you were going to interview people right after they had left the theater, to let them reflect on their experience. At the time, that seemed very feasible. Theaters had not yet reopened, but that would be a matter of weeks or months. But then it was March and theaters had still not reopened. If anything, the restrictions had become even stricter. So we had to completely redesign your project in a matter of about 2 weeks, I think, to keep it manageable by the end of the year. You reconceptualized your project to be about interactions among actors. And we thought that, well, if theaters wouldn't be able to reopen, then at least actors might have time to do interviews with you. So the question was, to which extent would actors be able to still build up energy and so-called emotional entrainment on stage when the audience was physically distant or just online? You noticed a very interesting parallel to what is often termed the flow experience. Would they still be able to get into a flow? Well, we quickly came up with a sample of experienced actors, and well, I cannot break confidentiality, but it was a rather impressive list of participants indeed, very well placed to share their experiences and insights on this. You found out that actors really made an effort to keep going without the constant and clear reaffirmation of an audience. They managed on the basis of professionalism, but either it was harder for them to get into a flow or they started to rely more on one another, as they would in a rehearsal. The sense of collective emotional excitement that is often experienced when large groups of people get together and share a focus was replaced by establishing personal connection with individual audience members throughout the play. And this was often only possible after some clear instructions were given to the audience about what they might expect. In a sense, the ground rules of the theater experience had to be spelled out for it to still be successful. You could say that the ritual aspects that are characteristic of theater needed to be redefined. And this has definitely illustrated the resilience and inventiveness of the cultural sector, but in some forms of theater, this transition seems to have been more easy than in others. Now, I'm not going to pretend saying that anything new, or saying anything that we didn't already know when I say that the corona thing wasn't a very nice thing. But, you have been able to theoretically make sense of why exactly it wasn't good for theater. So, Susanna, it is with great pleasure that I hand you your diploma today, because it is very well deserved. In fact, after getting to know you over the past year, and, without meeting physically even once, actually, I think that some more nice words on you and your attitude are in place. Of course, there is no list of character traits of the ideal student. That's largely a good thing, because there is no such thing as a single ideal student. But if we would have such a list, I think it would come pretty close to how you are. You are hardworking and diligent, receptive to criticism, eager to improve, punctual, modest, and just a very nice person too. In other words, it really has been a joy to be your supervisor. The only advice I can still give you is to not doubt yourself too much. You can safely trust your own capacities because you have loads. Trust me on that. So, congratulations, Susanna, or more respectfully and more accurately, Master of Arts for me.
And next, can I welcome Julia Peters? Diana, you can come here. Hi. It's the first time we meet, right? Like, not virtually. Nice to meet you. So, Diana wrote her thesis on collaborations between artists and scientists, a very timely endeavor since we seem to be witnessing some sort of academic turn in the arts, in which artists come to see themselves as researchers and use academic theory and methods. And what a coincidence, it's one of my favorite topics. It's highly interesting since in many people's minds, art and science are total opposites.
Science would be about finding truth through objectivity, while art would be about exploring perceptions through emotion and expression. Of course, I just drew up two caricatures of science and art, and this is exactly what Diana has shown through interviews with artists and scientists who work together on mutual projects. And Diana finds that the values artists and scientists hold in their work are actually very similar. For example, both involve intuition, creativity, the experience of a calling, and experimentation, albeit applied in different manners and at different times in the process by artists and scientists. And I think a lot of researchers at the UR can also know that this is true. And besides enjoying Diana's topic, I also enjoyed her personality a lot. Because a thesis is a struggle for anyone, but Diana always took critical feedback very calmly and positively and just got to work. And she always brought a very laid-back vibe to our meetings. All in all, I'm honestly so pleased that we're both standing here and that I can officially call you Master of Arts. And I wish you enjoy this day with people that matter to you, and I wish you the best of luck in anything you pursue in life. Julia. Yes, there you are. Hi, Julia. So, Julia had a very original topic. She analyzed how infographics vary depending on whether they contain left or right-wing content. And the originality of her thesis lies in the fact that she did not look at how these infographics differ textually. That would be a bit obvious. No, she did something I know to be quite hard, namely coding images rather than text. So she had to look at composition, use of color, whether or not there were people portrayed, and if so, what their facial expressions were, what the camera angle was, and she even considered the graphic design skills the infographics were made with. And Julia convincingly shows that left and right-wing infographics strongly differ aesthetically. For example, oh, by the way, we're talking about infographics that are shared on Instagram, so these are quite popular infographics. So let me see where. For example, right-wing infographics are far more likely to use dark tones and portraits of people looking you right in the eye, together suggesting an alarming confrontational message. And left-wing infographics were more likely to be light and bright, use more high-level graphic design, arts-in types of styling. And all in all, Julia shows that not only the textual, but also the aesthetic message is very important for the way left and right-wing information is communicated, which is of course key in this image-saturated era. So the second and third readers of your thesis were all at least as impressed as I was, and we all agreed that you should aim for a journal publication. And indeed, you actually already sent me a first draft for the publication last Friday evening, putting my own work ethic to shame a little bit. Sorry, I haven't read it yet. Obviously, Julia has been a dream student to work with. I often felt like I was writing a paper with a colleague rather than supervising a student, with the most important difference being that I didn't have to do any of the writing. Anyway, all these compliments are likely to let it go to your head, but let's make it even worse and announce that you've graduated cum laude. So, congratulations again, it's very well deserved, and I look forward to seeing where you go from here.
Perfect, dankjewel. Thank you. Ja, dat wel.
And next, can I have Naomi Osterman? There she is.
Okay, maybe it's an idea to get all of you down. Maybe that's easier for all of you. So maybe Laura, Marta, and Marina to come to the front. Maybe not in an awkward silence. Well done. Okay, so first and foremost, of course, my congratulations to the entire cohort that is sitting here today and can call themselves today a Master of Art in a little while. I mean, you could already, but now you just have the piece of paper to actually prove it. A small extra shout out to my girls from the Pre-Master Arts and Culture from last year, who I believe I taught every single course in existence for you last year. Obviously, many congratulations to you all, but it is very good to see you again after such a long time. Now, let me start with you, Marina. First of all, it is very good to see you again. It has been more than a year and a half. It's literally more than a year and a half since I last saw you live. Now, I have had the pleasure to be your teacher for the last 2 years for quite some courses, as I just mentioned, and I've got to come to know you as a very talented and very intellectual student. Last year, I was already delighted that you wrote your bachelor thesis with me, one of the very few in that year to attempt a factor analysis, which is really not the easiest thing to do, but something that you absolutely, I wrote down nailed, so I'm just going to have to say it. Something that you nailed. So when you indicated this year that you wanted to write your MA thesis with me, I told my colleagues with whom I coordinated the course, so Emily, Michael, and Koen, that I was like, okay, this one's mine. I do not care what happens next, but I want Marina. So there you go. This is how we talk about you. Nice one. So obviously, when I knew you were going to be my student, I was excited, and I wanted to believe that you were equally excited. I'm just going to take that as a yes. And you, for 100%, exceeded all the expectations. You also exceeded by far your word count. That was a long thesis, but you went above and beyond for your master thesis. You have made such a detailed analysis about symbolic boundaries and exoticism in translated Brazilian literary works, which was an absolute pleasure to read. The supervisory meetings that we had were always a treat, not only because your dog and cat would make frequent guest appearances in the background, but also because we had genuinely nice and very intellectually in-depth conversations, which of course happened more from your side than from mine. Of course, you did a fantastic job, as I knew you would, and not only did you get a very nice grade for your thesis, and I do hope a nice experience overall, even though you did your entire thesis and all your research from Brazil, your overall doing welliness has also earned you a distinction, which means that you not only completed your master degree, you did it cum laude even. Of course you did. Marina, many, many congratulations with finishing your master, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Are you going to do that, huh? Yes, perfect. Thank you. What about yourself as well? Yes. Yes.
Okay, then on to Marta, another one of the pre-master girls from last year. Now, also I was excited when you indicated that you wanted to write your MA thesis with me, because just like Marina, you also wrote your bachelor thesis with me, and you were so interested in the topic last year that you decided to expand upon it for your master thesis. I was excited because your bachelor thesis was already very good, so I knew your master thesis had to be good as well. And it was. You looked at some really tough topics concerning race, gender, and ethnicity in dance auditions. You uncovered some very tough discourses in your research, many of them just straight up with racist or sexist nature. I remember the meetings that we had about your thesis and the sort of constant falling into one amazement after the other with what your interviewees actually dared to say, which was onto you, because you are an excellent researcher and an excellent interviewer. I'm pretty sure you would be an excellent interviewee, but now you were an excellent interviewer. You combined all these discourses and made a really fantastic analysis and were able to put yourself in there, as you yourself are a dancer and unfortunately also had to personally experience discrimination in your dancing. You incorporated both your personal experience together with that of your interviewees and managed to create a thesis that had both academic rigor but also had your personality and your attitude in there. It might sound easy to the audience to do that, but it is really not easy to balance that out. But you did it really well. Additionally, I also very much enjoyed our supervision meetings, which towards the end were more and more of us complaining about the Dutch COVID measures or the lack thereof. And less about the thesis, not because we did not feel like talking about it, but you had it in the bag really from the beginning. So Marta, congratulations with your MA degree and all the best for the future.
Perfect, thank you. Van mij jezelf? Yes. Thank you.
Last but not least, Laura. I wrote down good to actually physically meet you first of all, but we did physically meet. We had like this one master thesis class. Yeah, one master thesis class. I was behind like a spot masker and a mask, but you were there. So this is not the first time we meet face to face. This is the second time probably we meet face to face. If anything, your thesis was a journey. You were really very brave in attempting what I can only consider to be one of the most complex topics there is within the broad topic of cultural heritage, which is international cultural property law. There you go. Arts and culture studies really has everything to offer. More specifically, you looked at provenance and restitution. The restitution specifically of African cultural heritage from German museums. So, that is a really tough subject, but also one that is very, very current. For those of us who study this topic of restitution, we tend to leave it to the cultural heritage lawyers. However, you also decided to sink your teeth into it, and it was a bit of a bumpy road. It's a tough subject, and it was a tough ride. Getting the show on the road was tough, nonetheless. It was difficult getting something that is so embedded within the discipline of law and transfer it within the social sciences. And I know, and I can see you laughing, that I might have pushed you a little bit throughout the trajectory. A little bit, I squeezed you a little bit. And that it was sometimes for you frustrating, because I could see that you worked so extremely hard and that you really at one moment knew absolutely everything there was to know about the topic, which I applaud you for that. And it really paid off in the end. You really, really managed to take the topic and present a very novel research about it, which actually is really an enrichment in our field of study. And really not so many master students can say that they have accomplished that. But you have really done so. So you know, you have that one in the pocket. That's where all that squeezing led to. Even better, during your defense, you actually told me and Doris, your second reader, that you landed a job with, I want to believe it was an auction house? Yeah, an auction house to look at issues concerning provenance.
Partly, yeah.
So there you go. You can immediately put into practice what you have studied so in depth in these last months. Laura, my apologies for all the squeezing, but congratulations on finalizing your master, and of course best of luck with your new job in the belly of the beast.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thanks. Van mij jezelf? Ja. Yes. Thanks. Perfect.
Next, I believe we are going to have a video from Thomas Calkins.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello, I'm Thomas Calkins, and I supervised Kimmy's thesis project entitled, There's More to Food Than Meets the Eye, or Is It Just a Matter of Taste? An exploration of class mobility and its effect on the etiquette of serving the meal and table manners in the Netherlands. In the initial stages of thesis planning, Kimmy suggested a project which focused specifically on crockery, its uses and origin stories, and how meanings around around this may shift depending on cultural training. And while this was an excellent topic for understanding domestic space and the manifestation of social differences in everyday life, Kimmy decided to broaden the scope of the paper to investigate other aspects of the meal. The arts and culture staff here at Erasmus have a long history with studying the connections between cultural consumption and stratification. Kimmy continues this tradition, presenting a thesis which examines the differences in mealtime practices between white and blue-collar workers. Using open-ended interviews and thematic analysis, Kimmy found evidence for differences between white and blue-collar respondents with regards to how they discuss etiquette, practices, crockery, and tastes in food. Most of Kimmy's findings confirm much of what we know about food from Bourdieu and literature on omnivorous consumption, that white-collar respondents display a greater degree of both cultural mastery and openness to other kinds of cultural forms. But her findings on the socially upward or downwardly mobile hint at promising avenues for future research on this oft overlooked subpopulation. When people end up in a social location that's different to the one that they began in, they often have to negotiate between different manners, ways of discussing, and enjoying the meal in the company of others. Kimmy currently has plans to further develop her thesis project into a journal article submission. Kimmy worked hard to overcome the limitations of online learning and thesis supervision, and the normal peaks and valleys that accompany most thesis projects. Throughout the process, Kimmy maintained a positive attitude in the face of these challenges, responding well to coaching and critique, without losing her vision of the project she wanted to complete. Kimmy received high marks for her paper, but she also contributed to the success of others in the program, advocating for important discussions between faculty and students. It was a pleasure supervising Kimmy. On behalf of Mikhail and myself, congrats on earning your master's, Kimmy.
And next we have the honor coatings.
And where's Marissa? She's not here. Marissa Ferrantou? She's not here. Okay, then, I hope you like to do the speech. I was just checking. I was wondering where she was. What shall we do?
I'll take the diploma and
Okay.
I think we can send her your
Yeah.
notation.
Yes.
Let's do that.
Yeah, is she watching? Maybe she's watching.
Oh, she might be on our stream. That could be. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I wanted to say, nice to see you in real lifetime, but that's not. Well, dear Marissa, you wrote your thesis when you were staying in Cyprus, and maybe you are now again. The topic you explored was the religious and national identification in the Republic of Cyprus. The interest for this topic started by your observations on religious education in the Republic of Cyprus, which is Christian Orthodox based. This means in school, children of other religions are exempted from this religious education and don't get an alternative offered. You wondered how this approach influenced young adults from various religious and cultural backgrounds. Your research questions were: how do young adults in Cyprus link their religions to their sense of national identity, and what is the role of Cypriotic religious education in the formation of the national identity? You dived into the history of Cyprus, and you did a thorough literary research in which you combined theories on ethnic and civic national identities, social identity complexity, and secularization. You interviewed young other adults with different backgrounds belonging to combinations of ethnic and religious majority and minority groups. You perceived a high level of social identity complexity among the young adults, which means, but correct me if I'm wrong, I would have asked Marissa, but if anybody can contribute, they may. This means they felt Cypriotic no matter what religious background they had, but they not always felt member of their religious group because of not agreeing with the beliefs of the mainly older people of the religious group. Religious education had minor influence on their understanding of their national identity, even though the majority of the interviewed wished they had multi-faith religious education. But it is not as simple as that. I quote one interviewed young adult in your thesis: "As an open-minded person, I will tell you that religious education should include other religions. As a Cypriotic, I will tell you that it should not." Unquote. No need to say your topic was very heavy and complicated. Therefore, to symbolize your thesis, I brought a feather because you researched a topic which had to be handled with care and carefulness. And you don't see the the feather. It's in a jar. I thought maybe it will fly away, so and that's too much drama for a ceremony like this. The feather for me also refers to your resilience during the process of exploring and writing your thesis. And if you translate resilience into Dutch, then resilience is translated as veerkracht, feather power. And I was impressed by your resilience, your feather power, doing the research while you were in the context of Cyprus. You literally hadn't the opportunity to distance by, for example, going to Holland. This was an extra challenge, but you managed it very well. Although I had to say, one time I was a bit envious when you told me that after our online meeting you would go to your yoga class on the beach. But this is, for me, also part of resilience, taking care of yourself. And this is how I experience you, as someone who balances work and life, someone with an enormous societal involvement, a hardworking, enthusiastic, motivated, and nice person. So it's a pity that I can't meet you live. So dear Marissa, I wish you all the best and a lot of feather power in the future.
And now we're going to take a little break and have our student speech by Kimmy.
Thank you, Laura, for the introduction. Dear friends, family, faculty members, esteemed guests, and fellow graduates, I have a confession to make. I began with outbursts of ideas and emotions on how to deliver this coming speech at our graduation ceremony. But once I started writing and reminiscing the year, the emotion was twofold. On one hand, bittersweet. The past couple years have been quite unusual for us all. From the pandemic, leading us to almost full-time online classes, limited in-person interactions with our peers, family, friends, and university has affected us all in different ways. On the other hand, absolute excitement. Although we faced a number of challenges this year, it also brought us opportunities. And most importantly, let's not forget, we made it. Today, we're graduating with a master's degree of Arts, Culture and Society from Erasmus University. Just ignore the screen. If there is one thing that the pandemic has brought us, it's time. time to think, time to take a step back, and time for conscious decision making. Personally, conscious decision making is what brought me here today to speak in front of you all. Last May 2020, I took the conscious decision to quit my full-time corporate job in order to pursue this master's. As you can imagine, this decision was not taken lightly. And you have probably been exposed to these kind of decision-making processes as well in the past couple of years. I actually had a quote by Epictetus, which I will read out to you. It's not it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it. So this opening quote by Epictetus, which was on the screen, highlights that what happens through the pandemic or other events is in fact just a slice of the cake. Therefore, I would like to give you a glimpse of the rest of the cake and share with you 4 takeaways from the past academic year. Takeaway number 1. A lack of in-person connectedness brings a lot of imagination to the mind. Just imagine some Zoom pictures of us. As I started getting to know my peers and professors virtually, I couldn't help myself but wonder, what is going on behind these people's screens and backgrounds? For students and lecturers alike, every online lecture offered a world of possibilities of where to log in from. So some students logged in with some plain kitchen behind them. Others had a very Instagrammable bedroom. Others were painters, so their backgrounds are full of paintings. And a couple of you even managed to log in from pretty exotic locations. You know who you are. And kudos has to go to Thomas, who's not here today, but for playing vinyls as background music during our classes. That was great. Takeaway number 2. A crate of 24 beers in the Netherlands can get you a long way. During our ethnographic research elective, we had to run our own ethnographic research project. Broadly speaking, the aim of our research was to observe communities in their own environment, document what is going on, and perhaps link them to sociological theories. Sorry. As I possess strong interest in social traditions and hierarchy, it came natural to me to pursue this topic of interest. Despite the challenge of not speaking Dutch fluently, I can proudly say that, thanks to a crate of 24 beers, I managed to infiltrate and take part in a traditional fraternity party in the name of ethnographic research. Takeaway number 3. Sometimes it's better to just do it. Imagine a Nike logo sign, just do it, without thinking too much about the amount of work, tears, sweat, caffeine that's about to go into it. My greatest stretch and proudest achievement this year is probably my master thesis. With the greatest help of my thesis supervisor, Thomas Calkins, as well as the input of other professors, my family and friends, I felt challenged to continuously push myself further into research and continue no matter what. So a deep thank you to all of you who helped me through this year. Now, no, it's okay. I imagine like dramatic music in the background, like Strauss kind of music. On a note of perseverance, for the girls in Rotterdam, I say girls because we were mainly girls, and I hang out with girls who want, well, because they're for those in Rotterdam who wanted to get out of their homes to study in a safe and inspiring environment, an environment that provided mediocre coffee accompanied by highly dosed sugar snacks from vending machines, an environment surrounded by the brightest Erasmus student minds, where Erasmus himself probably stood and read his book so attentively. It became our daily missions, ladies and gentlemen, to secure a study space in the Erasmus University Library. For those who know the daily challenges of logging into the library website at 8:58 a.m., constantly refreshing your page and fighting for the best slot on the first or second floor, unless you're Julia, who prefers to study at -1. You know about the level of drive that has developed from this. Fellow master students, we were in this together against the procrastinating first years, the enemies who wanted our favorite spots. This perseverance, this daily fight, this daily drive, let's keep this drive in our daily affirmations and everything we undertake. And last but not least, learning number 4. It's what you make of it. When taking on a new challenge, moving to a new city, or building new friendships, we're always presented with a choice of what to make of it. This afternoon, I shared a few of my own choices, and you too probably had a degree of conscious choice making in the past year, and there will probably be many more to come. As a final word to the speech, I would like to challenge you. Before taking on a new thing, or before taking on the next thing, I challenge you to think of this quote. It's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it. And then you ask yourself the following. If you consciously choose how to react to it, what is the one thing you would change? And what is your next step? Thank you.
Kind of strange. Our next advisor is Hanneke Atta, but it's going to be read by Koen van Eyck.
So I would like to invite Eva the taxidermist that is, and, and Isa to the floor. So Hanke apologizes, obviously. She's not only been working with us, but she also works in Antwerp and Groningen. Both places are quite difficult to combine with being in Rotterdam, as you can understand. So she sent me a text, and I will read that from my phone. It's not super fancy, but at least it's technology that works. Dear Eva, your journey, I'll start with Eva. Your journey of writing your master thesis was quite extraordinary, I must say. Changing subject 3 times. Exclamation mark, I should maybe 3 times. I wonder if this was more nerve-wracking for me than it was for you, as you kept quite calm and certain of your case. You were determined in finding the right topic to write about because it just did not feel good to do a whole research on something you did not feel passionate about. And with the same kind of determination, you finally wrote your thesis about something you really love, taxidermy. That this is a topic where your heart is became very clear. Although you had not much time left, you dived into it and delivered a practical and descriptive thesis which is interesting and entertaining to read. The cover is very inviting, even made some other teachers jealous that we were to assess this thesis, I heard. Both the second reader and I read your thesis with pleasure. We learned to look through the eyes of a taxidermist, which was quite exciting. The thesis does invite to more research on taxidermy, or as we said in your final assessment, there's a lot of untapped theoretical potential. I personally would find it interesting to do more research on the different values allocated to non-human animals and nature by the 3 types of taxidermists you outlined: classical, artistic, and scientific. I really do believe that your passion for taxidermy was the driving force behind your ability to pass your thesis in such short notice. For the future, I would say, Eva, stick to your persistence to follow your heart in whatever you do. Isa, the moment you heard that we graded your thesis with an 8 is one I will not soon forget. You were quite surprised, which in turn surprised me. Exclamation mark. From the beginning, you showed to be a hardworking student and a good planner. You conducted your research in a precise manner and were not easily satisfied, which I think is a good quality for a researcher. You did an amazing job in trying to find suitable cases for your study, which turned out to become a research on itself, with the conclusion that in the Netherlands there are not to find any completely bottom-up realized artworks in public space. For the cases you did find, although being sub-bottom-up cases, you did a tremendous job in interviewing the different stakeholders, including the audience passing by. I know how it feels standing outside in the rain trying to get as much data as possible. It made you decide to return to the place another time so you would get the data you needed. With the same kind of perseverance, you improved the concept version of your thesis, which was already sufficient. Time and again, you showed your ability to learn and you managed to deliver a very well-written thesis. Isa, I enjoyed working with you and I wish you good luck for the future.
Yes, continue. Perfect, thank you wel.
And our next advisor is Julian Scott.
So I think I'll put Naomi on this. Safi, Luca, Gresa. Get over it. Hi, good to see you. I have seen some of you offline, luckily. So let's begin with you, Safi, because you are actually, you restarted your thesis last year, and I was really happy that you're back. And I prepared a story, and I'll just follow that, okay? So, so while invisible to those who are not initiated, there's a golden law among people within metal music culture that fellow metal enthusiasts acknowledge each other in passing. Right? So a quick nod of the head, usually towards the correct metal t-shirt someone is wearing, sometimes joined with a brief display of the devil's horns. And this is, of course, a wonderful mechanism that can be studied sociologically, a brief acknowledgement of community and solidarity in an age of rampant individualization and alienation. And that music and its culture inspire such behavior is a prime reason to study it and indulge in it, I would also say. The reason that I bring all of this up is that when I met you, this started with a likewise acknowledgement of metal enthusiasm, particularly for the study of its culture from the inside out. I had just explained during the master thesis market that I studied gender inequalities and metal music, and you told me that you were a metal singer and that you had just played the infamous Roadburn Festival with Triptychon, a jaw-dropping thing in metal circles. Just Google it. So instead of sticking to the customary brief moment of acknowledgement, we decided to embark on the master thesis project together. So you came up with a great topic, which was also close to heart, seeing you were doing your studies while also building a career in metal music. And the question was whether building this career, and particularly having to be a creative entrepreneur, can in fact also be bad for you, specifically mentally. That this is not the thing that you signed up for, basically, when you started the metal band. You quickly dove into your wide network to interview upcoming and successful metal musicians to shed light on this question. All of this looked great. You took off really quickly until COVID struck. With live music on hold, we also pressed pause for your thesis for a little while. Then this year, you picked up again and with a bang. You delivered a great thesis on the impact of creative entrepreneurship ideology in metal music, which findings, I would argue, in fact, can also be applied beyond our own warm circle of metalheads. Among the things you can call yourselves now, a master in the arts, you can also call yourselves, count yourselves among the ranks of the so-called metallectuals, who are really lucky to have you. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors, both in music and academia. Who knows? Congratulations. Luca. So, Luca, great to see you again. We met when I acted as a tutor for the pre-master group for the course Sociology of Arts and Culture. Like Naomi, I think I've met many of you in that year. And I remember back then that you weren't quite sure yet whether you actually wanted to complete this program. And this kind of education maybe in general. You had some doubts about whether this was the right thing for you, appropriate in terms of the speech that we just heard. But there you were last year, ready for the master thesis project, still slightly unsure, but persistent, which turned out to become kind of a theme for this trajectory, I think, persistence. So in your first conversation on your thesis, you explained that you really wanted to do something with sustainable consumption. While I am pretty comfortable with most topics within cultural sociology, I wasn't sure why I would be the right person to assist you in doing so. I don't eat meat and I have a hybrid car, but that's as far as it goes, I would say. As you heard, I study music and metal. But as it turned out, you wanted to do something innovative methodology-wise, and this was really your main drive behind it, delving into cognition with implicit association tests, for example. And that is definitely something that captured my interest. We embarked on this journey in which you, mostly by yourself, in fact, developed a novel method to capture whether people care differently about different food and clothing labels that you find that are about ecology or whether something is vegan or not. And with this, a wonderful method, we did take up a lot of time developing that and creating that and thinking how to analyze all of that, resulting in a busy and bumpy end sprint towards the finish line. But like I said, you were persistent and you made it. And you did very well indeed. Thinking that we had dodged and dealt with all the bumps from pre-master to master's degree, we organized an on-campus defense. You knew I would be talking about this, right? Yeah. Okay. So together with Michael. Eager to finally see each other offline again. And excited for a defense of a thesis that we thought was really interesting and well done. We waited for your arrival. But then disaster struck. You were, in fact, hit by a car on the way to campus. Apparently, someone ignored your rights to safely and sustainably cycle on the cycling path. You called, and needless to say, we offered help and urged you to go to a doctor or hospital, whether we could get you there in some way. Rescheduling is not a problem at all. We'll do it some other time. But no, you insisted to have the defense. Now you have to imagine that this was a tough pickle for us as well. Obviously, we applauded the persistence, but is it ethically right to ask you tricky questions on a thesis when you've just collided with a car? But no, you insisted. Let's do it now. And we thought, well, if that's what will help you, then we'll do it. And against all odds, in fact, you delivered a marvelous defense, which we discussed today again, bringing this back up, which we perceived as simply a heroic effort. So, Luca, the saying that you got this degree through blood, sweat, and tears has never been more appropriate. So, I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. I have one more, yeah. Okay, Gresa. Hello. So, another one from the pre-master. So, the nice thing about a program like Arts, Culture and Society is that as a student, you can approach this broadly, taking everything in, or focused, by specifically honing in on the kind of art and culture that you like to study. Gresa, I think you fit firmly in the latter category, right? With your experience in the fashion industry and fashion in general, you focused your program on fashion, not only hopefully learning a lot about arts and culture through a fashion lens, but also teaching us and your fellow students about fashion. I think you were one of the people to constantly bring this up or bring this back in. And so, like Luca, we met during the pre-master course Sociology of Arts and Culture, where you immediately came across as a driven and enthusiastic student, but with a decidedly laid-back and relaxed attitude. Beyond academic circles, cool would be the word used, I think. And cool was also the work that you produced. For example, a very thoughtful essay. I don't know if you remember that in your words, ugly and clunky sneaker that is now a fashion statement among teens and people on the internet with a teeny disposition. Hey, those were my words, but the clunky sneaker were your words. Students often don't realize this kind of thing, but these are the kinds of papers that lecturers share with each other for their original and fun perspectives and ideas. And this was one of those. When we first met for the master thesis project, obviously it wasn't a surprise to me that you wanted to focus on fashion. You decided to take on the big question after these years of studying. Why isn't it seen as a legitimate form of art in art circles? Even though you had shown to be a great student, you were nervous about the project. Not only because you attempted to grapple with such a big subject. I remember that in one conversation you actually asked the question, maybe I should have a section about what is art. That's usually where it goes wrong, right? So, but also because the bachelor thesis had left you somewhat bedazzled about the empirical research. But you took off nonetheless, and with passion that I've seen before. Almost all your work was sent with the deadline still in the future, almost making other students on deadline submissions feel late. And the result was wonderful. You delivered an excellent thesis, which is both theoretically and empirically highly interesting and relevant, and you defended it with passion, while keeping it cool during our on-campus defense in July. And in fact, you did so well that you received your degree with cum laude, with distinction. So congratulations, and I wish you all the best on your future endeavors.
And now can we have Niels van Pucke?
Dear Emily, you introduced yourself to me during the first class of the elective course I teach in this master program, a course called Art Today. It is a course on so-called participatory art, a contemporary form of art where artists use people as the medium of art. Just like back in the days, artists used paint, sound, or stories as media through which the artistic imagination materialized. Art, in other words, where the artist collaborates with his or her audience in the creation of an artwork, and by doing so, debunking the traditional hierarchies that exist within professionalized art worlds. For example, by defining the artwork as a process rather than a product, or by making audience members producers of art. During that course on participatory art, you introduced yourself to me as a highly talented and extremely ambitious student. The assignments you submitted were of a very high quality and clearly contributed to improving the quality of in-class discussions and of the course at large. Sometimes you were overly ambitious, particularly in your writing skills, as your papers occasionally consisted of footnotes within footnotes within footnotes, but luckily that has improved also during the course of this thesis project, allowing the people who take part in participatory art projects to be capable of reading your thesis as well. Not surprisingly, your thesis was about participatory art too. More specifically on how this relatively new genre is evaluated by cultural intermediaries, and how the discourse they are producing is allowing the genre to transition from the margins of the contemporary art world more towards the center. It was an ambitious project which has resulted in a theoretically and empirically very rich, relevant, concise, and innovative thesis, which has been awarded by me and second reader Emily with a very high grade. So a different Emily, of course. Yeah. Emily, I am grateful that you introduced yourself to me in my course a few years ago and hope that we will manage to continue working together. Perhaps with you in the role of PhD candidate, which is something that you're currently working on. I hope you will succeed as you will be a valuable contributor to science and academia. And I think you will succeed if it wasn't for the fact that today you will be graduating with distinction, so cum laude, and I believe very close to summa cum laude from our department. Congratulations on this wonderful and amazing result, which I believe not only reflects your growth as an academic, but also reflects a more personal transition from a relatively shy student to a competitive and confident scholar. I hope I will hear much more from you in the future, preferably in some kind of participatory role, and wish you all the best in the future. Congratulations on this amazing result once again.
And next, can we have Kim Decor?
Irina and Ina, can you join me, please? Okay, great to meet you. Thanks for yes. Again, Irina and Ina, great to finally meet you face to face. I'm going to start with Irina, if that's okay. Yes. So, dear Irina, you start your thesis with the sentence, while the reader will skim through this paper, I suggest opening YouTube and playing lo-fi beats for a better read. And I did, and I think your second reader did that as well. An engaging and original way to start the thesis, and this statement also showed your personal connection to your thesis topic. You explored how anxiety-prone individuals give meaning to lo-fi music, a much-needed research. As you said yourself, especially in the context of the present pandemic, in which people may have become anxious from isolation and a lack of physical touch, it is important to explore how this subgenre may help elevate those negative emotions. You were very passionate about your work, and you stayed motivated throughout the process. And whenever there were moments that you were a little bit hesitant about the directions you should take, you always managed to pull through and come up with better suggestions as it pertains to your research. This flexibility, motivation, and strength will definitely get you far in life. Again, a great thesis, Irina, and who knows, maybe you will come up with a great idea for a meditation app that prioritizes lo-fi music, one of the suggestions you made for the mental health industries. I wish you all the best, Irina. Congratulations. So, dear Ina, I guess I will see you at the movies is the title of your excellent thesis. The topic of your work, queer can you maybe come a little bit close, I feel? Yeah. The topic of your work, queer representation in movies, is very important. As you stated in your thesis, not only is it societal relevant because it may relate to queer person's self-worth, but it also has been proven that the growth of queer depiction has led to a growth in queer acceptance and inclusion, a necessary value that more marginalized groups are striving for. Again, it is a great thesis overall, and I especially appreciated that you were not afraid to criticize traditional queer theory, and that you were aware of your own position as a researcher. It appeared that your process of writing your thesis was stable. I don't want to say relaxed or laid back, but consistent at least. You may have had a hard time with recruiting respondents during COVID, and probably just like other students in this room, but you had a clear mission, you delivered every time you had to deliver, and you remained passionate about your work. I remember that during our last online meeting, you said that you weren't sure if you could hand it in a thesis that is up to your standards because there were some personal matters you had to deal with, and then boom, you graduated cum laude. An amazing accomplishment, and I hope you will continue investigating queer representations in media. If not, I'm pretty sure that with your great personalities and capabilities, you will excel in everything you set your mind to. I also have a few words for Rachel. That sounds a little bit harsh. I don't mean it like that, but I prepared something. So, dear Rachel, you were fascinated with skateboard culture ever since your older brother began to skate at the age of 10. The lack of women identifying persons in skate parks, actually skating instead of watching, motivated you to research how they experience skateboarding culture. Whew, even adem hoor. Very interesting topic, and I particularly valued your critical theoretical perspectives. I remember that you told me that you were a little bit nervous to contact female skateboarders online because it meant that you really needed to get out of your comfort zone. I admire how you overcame that obstacle and contacted several skaters, and you even sent them a reminder. Very bold. Unfortunately, it was hard to get the amount of respondents needed, but you were determined to complete your master's this year. In order to complement the data, you had to incorporate the method of content analysis, and you did that in an excellent way. This was a testament of your perseverance, flexibility, and academic skills. You dedicated your thesis to your great-grandmother, father, and brother, and I'm sure that they are very, very proud of you. Great job, Rachel. You got a very promising future ahead of you.
And Emily Clark.
Helene and Katarzyna, please come forward. Last but not least. Nice to meet you guys. Helene wrote a thesis about how art from African artists is represented and described in ethnographic and fine art museums in the Netherlands. In our first messages and meetings about the project, Helene showed that her starting point was a place of deep and critical self-reflection about her own positionality, not as a mere neutral, objective scientist, but as a person with particular stakes and privileges within the history that she was analyzing. And this is something that the social sciences could use more of, I think, and as Helene showed in her thesis, the art world can as well. Helene took on the challenges of the past year, valiantly collecting data from museum exhibits even while most museums were closed. In the end, she produced a wonderful thesis and developed skills that will surely serve her well in her burgeoning museum career and whatever else you choose to do. Congratulations, Helene, and I hope you feel great and take some time to celebrate your accomplishment. I hope it's true if I say that Katarzyna and I had a really fun shared journey this year. I don't know if you would have described it as exactly fun at different points along the road, but I certainly hope that it seems so in retrospect. At the beginning of last year, we shared being new not only to Erasmus, but also to the social sciences, both of us coming from more humanities and kind of philosophy-oriented background. Katarzyna's project was driven by important questions about how digital media art can convey the critiques of the Anthropocene. In other words, how art can create experiences that actually help viewers to rethink their own perceptions of the world around them and how they relate to animals, plants, technologies, and resources. During a pandemic, Katarzyna figured out how to translate these abstract and pressing questions into data analysis and a beautifully written thesis that very much impressed all of its readers and has earned you a Master of Arts cum laude. Katarzyna, I hope that you feel confident in yourself and in the skills that you've gained and honed over the year. Your ability to pose deep questions, to stand by your perspectives, and convey your unique and original ideas are going to serve you well in your future, whether that's in academia or art or something else of your choosing. Congratulations, and I hope that you take some time to sufficiently celebrate this success.
And I am the final advisor. So Tessa, will you come up first? Yeah. First, I would like to say, Tessa, I did not recognize you. I looked at all of our graduates, and I could not point you out. And I think this is because, you know, for the past year, I have seen you behind Zoom and with your head in your hands. And perhaps it was the look of a little bit of stress that you have lost, that I could not recognize you today. But yeah, when I looked right past you, of all the grinning faces, and thought, that's not the girl I recognize on Zoom. But I'm so glad to see you stress-free and happy today. I want to say first, I always thought you knew what you wanted in your thesis. And I do not think that you actually think you knew what you wanted in your thesis. No, but I would say that you always knew. Because you started off with this idea of economic crises, and you sent 100 emails to different museums. You got a very good response rate of 40 museums to write her back, which is a huge number. We're very proud of 40% in sociology. And you found out through the data that you gathered that maybe economic crises was a very difficult thing to study. So you changed this into looking at rural versus urban museums. And I remember in cultural policy that you had this question about rural and urban museums. So for me, this was just coming full circle into your interests, and that you always had an idea of what you wanted. Your big takeaway from this thesis was that the financial health of museums in the Netherlands was pretty good, but there was a difference in government spending for rural museums. And this thesis really contributes not only to organizations and having this idea of safeguarding our rural museums, our rural treasure boxes, not just our urban ones, but it also had a good sociological underpinning of what do we value, what do we find worth in. So I really enjoyed this thesis. I know you were frustrated during it. I was frustrated during it. We were frustrated together over Zoom. And what I think is so admirable about your frustration is that you graduated in a year. You did not think you could do it. And I always believed in you. We had ups and downs, but you did do it. And that frustration really paid off. And I'm so proud of you. Rosa, I have known you for 2 years now. You are definitely a student of the pandemic. And, you know, you found your research interest over the 2 years. You really like this idea of design and heritage, and you brought them together, and I love how your research kind of exemplifies the pandemic. You looked at how people preserve past for the future. How do you preserve the collections? How do you preserve knowledge? How do you preserve the way that we felt for the future? And that's something definitely during this pandemic that is really important. So I really enjoy how your thesis, for me, spoke to the pandemic. You talked to the custodians of design collections, and you found that they have a limited amount of control, but enough to safeguard and protect our past and our heritage. And I think that this had a lot of implications for both, again, organizations, museums, for heritage, but also speaking to us about how important remembering our past is, remembering the moments of our past. So during the pandemic, I think all of us asked the question, what is next? And what I really admired about working with you is that you had this incredible ability to move forward. Every time we talked, you were collected, you were controlled, you knew kind of an idea, at least, of what you wanted to do. And that really was very inspiring. We just kept moving forward like this. And so your thesis was really at the heart of this, about what was in the future. How do you keep an eye, and your heart of it was at how do you keep an eye towards the future. I really admired everything that you worked for the past 2 years. It was a very difficult past 2 years, and I'm very proud of you.
And you as well. Yes, and we have a nice effect from. Well done. Thank you.
I know that you are all excited about getting to your dinners and your drinks, and I want to congratulate all of you in very short notice. You are now under the title of a Master's in Arts and Culture Studies. Congratulations, and congratulations to your family and friends as well. This concludes our ceremony. Please, before you mess up your graduates with lots of hugs and kisses, you are going to take pictures outside with your caps and gowns. So you will be able to leave first to go take those. Yes.